Caitlin just earned a spot in the WNBA All-Star starting lineup for the third year in a row, yet the way she got there has lit up the entire basketball world. When her fellow players filled out their ballots, they did not place her first or third or even inside the top 10. They ranked her the 11th best guard in the league. To understand why that number is causing such an uproar, you have to understand how this vote actually works. WNBA All-Star starters are chosen through 3 separate groups. Fans control half of the final result, the media controls 1/4, and the players themselves control the last quarter. Among the fans, Clark finished second overall, trailing only Paige Bueckers by the slimmest of margins. Bueckers pulled just over 1 million votes, and Clark sat only about 20,000 behind her. Among the media, she landed third, but among the players, the people who share the court with her every single night, she came in 11th among all guards. Read that again. Her own peers decided that 10 other guards were more deserving of a starting nod than the most talked about player in the sport. And here is the part that makes it even harder to explain away. This is not a case of a struggling player riding pure popularity. Clark is having the best statistical season of her career. She is averaging 21.2 points per game, which is a career high. She is adding 8.2 assists per game, which places her second in the entire league. She is pulling down 4 rebounds a night and shooting 34.4% from three-point range, also tied for a career high. She sits inside the top 5 in scoring and near the very top in assists and three-pointers made. In fact, she currently owns the best combined points and assists averages in the history of the league. So when the players say she is the 11th best guard, the numbers simply do not agree. There are not 10 guards playing better basketball than Caitlin Clark right now, and everyone watching knows it. That gap between what the scoreboard shows and what the players voted is exactly what set off one of the loudest voices in American sports media. Fox Sports host Colin Cowherd used his show to tear into the players over the result. He pointed out the obvious contradiction. In his words, Clark is the #1 shooter, distributor, play initiator, and playmaker, and yet she was voted the 11th best guard in the sport. Cowherd framed the ranking as pure pettiness, a group of players going out of their way to send a message to the one athlete pulling the biggest audiences in the league. He has made this argument before, and he was far from alone this time. Across social media, fans reacted with disbelief that the athletes closest to the game could look at this season and land on 11th. Many pointed out the same painful irony. Here was a player being double-teamed the moment she crossed half court night after night, now being told by her own colleagues that she was not even a top 10 guard. It is worth being fair about how the ballot was built. Each player was asked to name only a handful of guards, and the league is genuinely deep at that position right now. Names like Paige Bueckers, Olivia Miles, and Kelsey Mitchell all had strong cases, and voting by position rather than by overall impact naturally squeezes a crowded group. In a room that full, 1 or 2 spots slip away fast. That context can explain a drop of a place or two. What it does not explain is a fall all the way to 11th for a player sitting near the very top of the entire league in both scoring and assists. The math and the ranking live in 2 different worlds, and that distance is the whole story. But this snub did not happen in a vacuum. It is the latest chapter in a much longer story. This is not the first time the players have ranked Clark far below where the fans and media see her. Last season they placed her 9th among guards, but that year there was at least a basketball explanation, since she was dealing with an inconsistent start before a groin injury ended her run. This season there is no such excuse. She has been healthy and she has been dominant, and the players still moved her down, not up. The voting is only one piece of the pattern. There is also the way she gets treated on the floor. In a recent loss to the Phoenix Mercury, An opposing player drove a fist into Clark's neck during live action. No foul was called in the moment, and both teams simply kept playing. Only after the fact did the league review the play, upgrade it to a flagrant foul, and hand out a one-game suspension. Moments like that have fed a growing belief among fans that the most valuable draw in the sport is also one of the least protected players on the court. Then there is the poster. The league recently released a commemorative image celebrating 30 years of the WNBA, featuring stars from across its history. Clark was left off it entirely, even though newer names like Paige Buchers and Angel Reese made the cut, and even though one of her own teammates was included. For critics, leaving the single most marketable player in the sport off a celebration of the league looked less like an oversight and more like a choice. There is also a detail in the voting itself that deserves attention. According to reporting, fewer than half of the league's players actually submitted a ballot. Only about 85 of roughly 180 players filled theirs out, and some players said they never even received one. So the ranking that has caused all this outrage was shaped by a partial group, which makes reading it as a single unified message a little more complicated than the headlines suggest. So the real question is what this whole episode actually says about the league. On one side, you have people who see this as jealousy, plain and simple, a group of veterans unwilling to hand respect to a young star that the public has already embraced. On the other side, there is a fairer counterpoint worth hearing. Clark had played only a handful of games in the stretch before voting closed, and she had gone through a rough shooting slump in a few of them. Some argue this is simply what professional leagues have always done, making young stars earn their place rather than crowning them instantly. We have seen this pattern before with young superstars in other leagues, where veterans were slow to hand over the throne. Even so, almost no one believes she is truly the 11th best guard in the world. Her weighted score across all three groups still ranked her third among all guards, which is exactly why she starts. The players tried to push her down, and the fans and media pulled her right back up. What makes this bigger than one vote is what it reveals. The WNBA is growing faster than at almost any point in its history, and a huge share of that growth is tied directly to interest in Clark. Her nationally televised games have drawn ratings that dwarf almost everything else the league produces, in some cases doubling the audience of games featuring the reigning most valuable player. When the athletes inside that league appear to snub the very player fueling its rise, it creates a strange and very public tension between the business of the sport and the pride of the people playing it. A rising league needs its biggest star to feel celebrated, not sidelined, and every episode like this sends the opposite message to the millions of new fans watching. There is one more twist worth watching. The All-Star game itself lands at the end of the month, and Clark will walk onto that floor as a chosen starter in front of a national audience, wearing the votes of the fans and the media on her back. The same players who ranked her 11th will be sharing that court with her. If she puts on a show, the ranking looks even smaller in hindsight. If the tension carries over, it becomes another headline in a season that has produced no shortage of them. Either way, the league has handed its cameras the exact drama it keeps saying it wants to avoid. The 11th place ranking will not keep Caitlinclark out of the starting lineup, but it has once again turned a routine announcement into a national conversation. Whether you see it as disrespect, as jealousy, or simply as a young star being made to earn her stripes, the divide between the fans and the players has never been more visible. And as long as that gap keeps growing, this is a story that is only getting started.